Literally the best article I've ever read on WEP, the Windfall Elimination Provision, without question. I don't know who this guy is, but this guy's freaking crushing. So we're going to talk about this. And this is Dan Ryan, who had written this book here I never read, which I'm going to share with you. Social Security for state and local government employees. All right, so this is great. And I'll put a link in the show notes. If this is you, you need to buy this guy's book. Because if this book is anywhere near how good this article is, and he also talks about GPO, this guy just gets it. I'm a big fan. All right, so we're going to cut to the chase here. So just remember, when you're on Social Security, there's 3 bend points. All right, so your first $1,100 of index monthly earnings. I don't want to get too deep in how this calculates because I want to focus solely on WEP. But remember, there's 3 bend points. Your first $1,100 of average index monthly earnings, you get a 90% replacement rate. That's what we all do, okay? Anything above the next bend point is the next $5,600, you only get 32% replacement rate. And anything above that will be a 15%. So Social Security is a progressive pension system. And if we go back here, he shows you if you're in a low income bracket, you're at $25,000, your Social Security benefit will be $12,835, which means you have a replacement rate of 51%. If you're in the highest income bracket relative to Social Security, your annual wages at $136,000, your benefit will be $34,000. So you're going to get $22,000 more than this lady right here, but your replacement rate has gone down by 50%. It went from 51 to 25. All right, that's the progressive nature of Social Security. Now, what Dan says in here, he says, which makes sense. That's how Social Security works. The more income you make, the less you'll get as a Social Security replacement rate because it's a progressive system. It's set up solely to keep people from being impoverished. That's what it's there for. It's not to make anybody rich. It's not to make you comfortable. It's to keep you from being impoverished. And it does a good job of that. There's no other way around that. Now, what Dan would say is, unlike a pension a lot of times will give you basically 70% of your last 3 years of pay. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you get 70% of that, you get $70,000 a year. If you're making $30,000 a year, you'll get 70% of that. And I don't know what that is, $21,000 a year, I guess. It has nothing to do with your wages, just has to do with the contract. Your pension will pay you as basically a percentage of your last 3 years of labor, if that makes sense, of income. We call it like the military is like the high 3 and stuff, and I can't remember what that is. It has nothing to do if you're a general or you're private Joe Snuffy. You're getting the same percentage as your last 3 years. All right, that's the difference between Social Security and a pension. Social Security is progressive and a pension is not. All right, so let's cut to the chase here. All right, so to figure out our Social Security benefit, we take our average salary, which is calculated called the average index monthly earnings, which is basically you're taking all your top 35 years of index earnings. Index kind of means adjusted for inflation. It's actually called the average wage index, but it's the same kind of concept. So we're going to take your average index monthly earnings, all right, and then what happens is we're going to give you about 3 bend points. So the first $1,100, you're getting 90% of that AIME. Everybody is, all right. The next $5,600, you're getting 32% of that. Everybody is. Anything above that, you're getting 15%. So again, it's an indexed, progressively indexed system where you're getting less of a benefit the more income you make. All right. As a result of these varying replacement rates, a worker with an average monthly earnings of $1,300 would receive a Social Security benefit of $1,063. Again, they got $1,300. The first $1,100, they're going to get 90% replacement rate, and then the amount above that would only get 32%. So in this case, if you made $1,300, your Social Security benefit would be at $1,063. You'd have a replacement rate of 82%. A retiree with average earnings of $7,500 gets a Social Security check of $2,914, but his replacement rate drops to 39%. Again, the progressive nature. For public employees with pensions from non-covered work that you didn't pay taxes into Social Security, there's a modified formula. The first increment of wages, this $1,100 a month, you're not getting a 90% replacement rate, you're getting a 40% replacement rate. Everything else stays the same. So using this formula, the average Social Security earnings of $1,300 produces a monthly benefit for you, because you're subject to the Windfall Elimination provision, of $505 and a replacement rate of 39%, which is $558 less than if the WEP was not applied. The replacement rate is the same as a high wage earner. That's exactly what's happening here. So because you have non-covered earnings, you're basically your replacement rate is the same as if you were the high wage earner. Okay, again, you got a replacement rate of 39%, which is what the high age earner had, a replacement rate of 39% as well. That's actually very interesting. If we go up here, we can see like here's a medium wage earner. But so what happened? And so why do they do that? Well, so Dan gives an example. A hotel maid gets $1,100 payment from Social Security, and a retired police officer gets $542 for the same Social Security covered earnings. The maid is in effect receiving a bonus due to her near poverty level income. The retired officer or teacher or building inspector is simply not in the same financial situation. The WEP formula reflects this. All right, so again, your WEP is, this first bend point is 40%, not 90%. All right, just keep that in mind. It's basically the max you could lose in WEP is 558, right here, 558. Now, what you can do to lessen that is if you have substantial earnings. If a person has 30 or more years of substantial earnings paying into Social Security, the WEP does not apply, even if you get a benefit from a non-covered job. All right, so if you have 30 years of substantial earnings, what is substantial earnings? $27,300 or more. That's substantial earnings. So if you have a job of covered earnings of $27,300 for 30 years, it will be no WEP, even if you have a public pension where you didn't pay into Social Security. Between 21 and 29 years of Social Security substantial earnings, the impact of the WEP formula is lessened proportionally. For example, if you have 25 years of earnings, this right here is 65%, not 40%. All right. So again, it goes up each and every year how many years of substantial earnings. So the way to avoid the WEP is to have 30 years of substantial earnings. Substantial is 27,300 or more. The amount is inflation adjusted is lower in the past and higher in the future. Yeah, 100%. Each year's requirement is spelled out they got a publication here. WEP does not apply to survivor benefits. That's, again, survivor benefits is something we'd want to look at with GPO, government protection, pension offset. WEP reduction is limited. Finally, the reduction of the WEP cannot be more than 1/2 of your public pension. All right, so if your public pension is $800, you're not going to have a WEP reduced to $558. It can't be more than $400. All right, so that's good enough. That protection is rarely invoked, but may help persons who have a relatively low public pensions. What will your benefit be? The best approach for estimating your benefit is to go to the website and register for an individual account. Well, I completely agree. They actually have an online calculator WEP version. Input your Social Security earnings from your government account from the SSA.gov and receive a pretty good estimate of your future earnings. But remember, your Social Security statement does not reflect the impact of your government pension. The Social Security statement that's mailed to you at certain ages or upon request does not reflect any possible changes in Social Security due to your government pension. This because at the time the estimates are made, Social Security knows only so much about your pension history. Accordingly, they issue a statement without any calculation. But with general warning that government pension may impact your estimate. Yep. Is it fair? Well, here's from Allison Shelton's WEP and GPO papers. Since a worker's monthly benefits for monthly earnings for purposes of benefit calculation are averaged over a typical working lifetime rather than over the years actually spent in covered employment, a higher earner with a short period of time in covered employment cannot be distinguished from an individual who worked a lifetime in covered employment at an exceptionally low rate. Thus, a worker who is entitled to a state and local pension outside of Social Security could qualify for the subsidized benefits with a progressive benefit formula because they look like they're poor on paper. Yeah. In other words, the WEP is not a punitive apparatus that unfairly reduces a teacher or other public services benefit. It is intended to equalize replacement rates among public and private workers who have the same total lifetime wages. Yeah. 100% agree. I still think get rid of the WEP to begin with. I actually don't think it's fair relative to stay-at-home spouses. They don't get subject to WEP. And they don't get subject to GPO. I think it's insane that it's still there, but it is what it is, man. And that's right now is what we're dealing with. So not to know it is to be ignorant, and to be ignorant is not bliss in this regard. All right, I'll send you a link to the article. Love your thoughts. We'll see you.